Hey everybody, what's going on? Decided to do something a little bit different. Do a little muckraking, and thought who would be better to start this new little segment on my channel than the legendary Queen Hitler herself, Queen Black Hitler, I should say. I mean, Gazimoto, he's a special one, but Sin really really gives him a fucking run for his money. So let's see what kind of uh, jewels she has to give to us today in her video. Why most white people embrace racism and slavery. Oh, this is gonna be great.
Hey guys, so I wanted to jump
Hey,
on here and bring this story to you that I saw on Facebook, and I actually thought it was really interesting. And I'm going to show the
real quick. Sorry if my audio is all fucked up. I'm gonna get a real microphone set as soon as I get a little bit extra money saved up. So please bear with me. Anyway, carrying on. Queen Hitler.
show you the article that I'm going over. So this article was circulating around Facebook, and it posed a very interesting question.
Let's hear it.
Of course, you know, when I saw the comments on the Facebook post, the reaction to it was, of course, what you would expect people.
Laughter. That's usually what I would expect at the concept that white people would embrace racism and slavery. Was there a lot of laughter? Laughter for 500. Let's see.
People to react by saying, this will never happen again. Black people simply wouldn't stand for it. You hear Black people constantly.
Oh, I'm a fucking idiot. I mean, of course she obviously does not have any white people on her Facebook profile. Fuck, man. Messed that one up. Anyway, let's get a little bit further.
Saying, if I was born during the slavery days, I wouldn't deal with that. If I was in Jim Crow, I wouldn't deal with that. And yet we have a system that is very much the same.
What system? I always hear SJW psychopaths like Sin just say system. It's one of their favorite fucking words. It's right up there with oppression and problematic. What system? Like, is it called anything? Because I have a feeling they like to keep the definition as nebulous as possible so they can always just move the goalpost and never give any actual like tangible or measurable definitions of a system. Keep it as vague and as nebulous as possible. That way you can never be proven wrong. Let's continue.
And we don't even recognize that it's the same. And a lot of us are tolerating certain behaviors. So what drew me to.
I'm going to tolerate your behavior. I think it's only properly egalitarian of you to tolerate behaviors you might not necessarily like. Just my idea.
This article and to do this video is I was thinking that with psychopaths, and I told you that the group of people that were dealing with the evil albinoid population.
The evil albinoid population. That's a good one. I'm going to use that. Apparently we're psychopaths. All right.
They're very psychopathic in nature. That is their mentality. So whenever you have just in normal everyday life a group of people, anyone, it doesn't even have to be a group of people, but people who don't want to stop doing something, that enjoy a particular activity or behavior, making it lawful doesn't mean they're going to stop doing it. They will simply find new ways of doing it. One characteristic of a psychopath is to always have a backup plan. They plan ahead. So they're always scheming. They have.
I don't think that's what a psychopath means. I think she just pulled that out of her ass. Let's Google psychopaths real quick. Let me get rid of this real quick. Psychopath. So a personality disorder as persistent antisocial. Some bold, just egotistical traits. Yeah, nothing about planning. That's probably autistic as fuck of me, but I'm a bit of a language geek, and that kind of stuff pisses me off. It's like, I think what you meant to say was sociopath, not psychopath. There is a difference. Anyway, let's resume our journey into the pits. of hell.
backup plans, and then they have backup plans to their backup plans. So if you really have a devious mentality and you enjoy doing something and you don't want to stop doing it, you want to continue to do it, especially
Yeah, she's a fucking idiot. You're describing a sociopath. I'm sorry. I know that's like so fucking petty of me, but it's real annoyance of mine.
if it's profitable, you're just going to find different ways to do it. You'll make it look different, but really it's the same thing. And that's what's going on. So I do really believe that in a number of different ways, number one, we are still in slavery.
You're still enslaved, huh? Okay. Well, I don't think. I mean, I've never owned a slave. I'm not an expert on the protocols of all involved with slavery. I don't think, however, slaves are allowed to have about $500 worth of makeup on. I think that's a big no-no. I don't think makeup is a particularly friendly um, among slave owners. I could be wrong. You know, someone let me know. Maybe they did let black people wear makeup in fucking the antebellum South. Somebody correct me. But yeah, I mean, it looks like a nice house. I mean, I've seen a few of our other videos that I might go through. She clearly seems to do fairly well for herself. I'm not sure what she does. Um, but she looks pretty solidly middle class. And this is something else about SJWs I find so fascinating is that these are people who usually have pretty solid lives themselves, like they live pretty normal functioning lives, like solid middle class kind of environments, and they just get so absorbed by this victimhood. It just completely consumes them, even though they've probably never even remotely approached anything even close to victimhood in their lives. I don't know, Sin. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. I've seen a few of her videos. She does them, I'm assuming, in her own house, unless she's with her parents or something. I don't know. Not sure how old she is. But yeah, she does not look like a slave to me.
number two, these evil albinoids, even
I love that. I love that phrase, evil albinoids. You should really do what Africans do to albinoids in Africa. It's pretty common that they'll kill albino Africans in Africa. Uh, I think due to some sort of insane like witchcraft theory. Um, I just bring that up because it's there's racism everywhere. It's like I guess it's sort of not racism if they're albino Africans. I don't know. It's sort of racism. Like it's kind of racism, kind of on the edge. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Let's keep going.
if they brought back shadow slavery, they would call it something.
You say shadow slavery? Let me rewind that real quick.
Even if they brought back shadow slavery, they would
I think she's trying to say chattel slavery. There's a ch there, lady. If you're going to bastardize the human language with psychopath, you could at least pronounce words correctly if you're going to bastardize words.
would call it something else and the masses would go for it. Keep in mind, you have, especially on my comments, you will have a lot of these albinoid devils sitting here saying, oh, well, only 1%, 1% of the population had slavery, or white people didn't even like slavery, they didn't benefit from it. However, we know that's a damn lie.
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, slavery as an economic system, it's one of the primary reasons why the South lost the Civil War. They couldn't produce nearly the equipment. They didn't have the railway system in place to support a long-term war effort. There's a couple reasons why the South ended up, going south. Ding. Anyway, a couple of reasons why the South lost, but yeah, the white people of the South did not benefit personally from slavery all that much. It was very much a one percenters. I fucking hate these pop-ups. I always get them. Anyway, yeah, it was definitely something that the that the benefit of slavery was mostly given to a pretty elite group of rich plantation owners. The average, poor white Southerner did not really enjoy any kind of benefit from slavery. Not in an economic sense, not really in the social sense. I can't really think of anything. Let me know in the comments below if you think if there was some way that the average white Southerner benefited directly from slavery, because I can't think of any. Let's keep going.
The same mentality that you're dealing with back then when everyone sat there complacent and thousands of white people benefited from it, joined in it with lynching. You had thousands of
Okay, well now you're like conflating the Jim Crow era South with slavery. Like there's a difference between those two periods. They're both pretty horrible, but there's a difference between those two periods. Um, I think she's just kind of rambling. Should I be critical of that? I mean, I kind of ramble. Uh, anyway.
thousands of them out there um, celebrating the death of a black man.
I mean, there's a lot of like BLM supporters who celebrate the death of like, or excuse me, who want to celebrate the death of like George Zimmerman. And like whatever you think of the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman fiasco, I don't think it's okay to celebrate people's murders. There's people who celebrate murders, quite regularly. It's not a unique albino albinoid trait.
The same mentality today. You have the same exact mentality. If they were to bring back chattel slavery, every white person, regardless to whether they felt like they benefited monetarily from it or not, they would join in with it. They would be okay with it, just like they were back in the 80s.
Okay, you do know like white people, like a race of people is just a large collective of individuals. So, like the idea that white people, who in the past might have been tolerable of slavery, would today be tolerable of slavery, and specifically the chattel slavery of black people, because some of their ancestors did in the past. It does not logically follow sin. It does, Uh, I feel like an idiot responding to her because these are things that you'd think would be very obvious, but I guess not that obvious.
1800s and the 1700s and the 1600s when it began. All of them would be okay with it.
So here's a thought. I usually get a bit annoyed when people say this that the Civil War, and I know she's not really talking about the Civil War, but it's what's coming to mind here when she talks about slavery and the return of slavery. Um, it usually annoys me a bit that people suggest the Civil War was just about slavery, and no, that's not really true. There are other issues there as well. Things like states' rights, northern Yankee imperialism, and kind of the extension of Puritan culture. This is a whole different topic in and of itself. But let's say that's true. Let's say the Civil War was fought completely and exclusively over the issue of slavery. Well, that would mean that there were hundreds of thousands of white men who killed themselves, or not killed themselves, but ended up getting themselves killed in order to end chattel slavery. So does that like not count for anything? I mean, like, can we get a scorecard somewhere, like some sort of like a score system? How many redemption points do we have to be? Because I think, hundreds of thousands of white people dead by the end of the Civil War, it count for something, right? Like, a couple points, 5 points, 6 points. I don't know. I don't know.
Because you can look at the mentality now. You're not going to tell me that they wouldn't
She's about to talk about Donald Trump. I'm calling it.
be okay with chattel slavery, but they're okay with.
Damn it. Who the fuck is... I'm getting a little distracted. Somebody on Skype's bothering me. Whatever.
Black
Talk to him
children
later.
being shot and killed in the street.
I'm guessing this is her attempt to refer to black on black crime. I mean, there are quite a few white people who care a lot about the crime rates within Black American neighborhoods. I care about it. Like I know Black people. I don't want them to live under those conditions. I like them, so much that I'm willing to talk about these problems, even when sycophantic racists like you are going to call me the racists because I try to acknowledge reality. Seems a bit backwards to me. I don't know. What do you think, Sin?
That's the thing. If you have the mentality that it is okay for a child to be shot and killed within 2 seconds of an officer arriving on the scene and you can defend that, you would
Oh, she's talking about cops. Of course she is. I mean, yeah, I can't remember the name of the fucking name of the kid. Unfortunately, not off the top of my head. Yeah, it's a fucking tragedy. I know the one she's talking about though. Yeah, it's a fucking tragedy. I wish it didn't happen. Um, but black children being shot by cops is not as frequent of an occurrence as young black teenagers or just black children in general being injured by gangs or in some sort of drive-by shootings scenario. It's clearly a much greater problem of uh, poor black people shooting each other than it is for cops of any race to shoot at black people across the board. It's like this ship over here is starting to sink, and this ship over here is it's got like two holes in it. It's like, all right, I understand why two holes is a bit of an issue here, but this ship is starting to sink. Like, how about you focus on the ship that is already sinking? It's about priorities. We try to figure out. You have limited resources, and you have to direct those resources to fix problems that are more egregious or worse than other problems.
have no problem with slavery occurring. You wouldn't. We have mass incarceration, that's slavery. We still
No, mass incarceration is not slavery. Slavery is the ownership of people. Um, slaves do not have a choice when they are enslaved, no matter what race they are. Albanians and Serbians and other Slavic people did not have a choice when Ottoman officials enslaved their children and turned them into the Janissary Corps. Uh, you know, fucking. I mean, we can keep going down the list of other groups that were victimized with slavery at some point, which is, virtually every single group of people in the world. So, yeah, a slave is someone who doesn't get to choose. If you're in jail or if you're in prisons, excuse me, that means that you broke the law and you're being punished for it. You cannot be trusted to abide by the laws of a society, so they're going to remove you from that society, and you will not get the benefits of being in that society until you have demonstrated that you, I guess not demonstrated, but you've been punished sufficiently that the idea being you can be trusted to return back to a society, and you'll now obey the laws. A law can be bad. Um, there can be things that shouldn't be against the law that are against the law. I'm totally opposed to a lot of the drug war initiatives that this country's launched since Nixon. They've virtually all of them have been complete failures. Drugs are a bigger problem now than they were in the fucking 70s and 80s when they first started to really become criminalized. So yeah, the laws can be bad, but it's clearly very different from slavery. These are not the same things. Sin.
are segregated. So we have a Jim Crow situation, that's slavery. We still have social injustices, and rather than them speaking,
All right, sorry about that. No, slavery is not segregation. It's it's clearly something very different. Slavery is the ownership of people. A segregation is the artificial, arbitrary separation of peoples. Uh, that it's laws that require people to be separate from each other, regardless of their choice. There's no freedom of association. Um, It's interesting. I've read about a couple of BLM protesters and other of those kind of sycophants who've started demanding segregation on college campuses. So I'm curious if Sin thinks that if segregation and slavery are the same thing, are these BLM sycophants asking to re-enslave themselves? What do you think about that, Sin?
Speaking out and joining in the fight with you to dismantle it, what they'll do is they'll say, "Oh, I don't have any white guilt," or "Oh, these social justice warriors," and they'll make it seem like it's a bad thing. So they're showing you their mentality already. It's the same as it was back then. That's why it went on for so long, and that's why they had to be forced by way of war to end it.
What do you mean forced by way of war? Like, the civil rights movement was not a war against white people. In fact, I distinctly remember reading about a lot of um, fighting between various parts of the civil rights movement over whether or not the escalation of force was something that would be tolerated. And that dichotomy is kind of best represented by obviously MLK and Malcolm X. Malcolm X, um, people are a little bit hard on Malcolm X, or I should say, some white people are a little bit hard. I'm not that hard on him. I think when you read a lot more about what he says, you get a better understanding of what his idea was. His idea was that, well, if this can't work and it crosses a certain line, then some form of self-defense that will probably manifest in the form of violence is necessary. Now, that's a very different thing than what a lot of people say his mentality was, which was, fuck white people. He was, I mean, he was a racist, but his views were a bit more nuanced. And I lost my train of thought. What was she saying? Oh yeah, a war. They had to be forced by war. Like, what the fuck do you mean forced by war? Like, is she talking about the civil rights movement? She's kind of, unless she's talking about the Civil War again. But again, I'll just return to my point. Wait, hang on, let's see what exactly she's talking about.
Because most of them see nothing wrong with it, even today. This is why, rather than them saying, "Oh,"
all right, whatever. If she's talking about the Civil War again and she wasn't talking about the civil rights movement, then okay. But again, in that war, if we accept the idea that the Civil War was all about slavery, then in that war, hundreds of thousands of white people died in the process to end slavery. And, hey, 4 or 5 points? You tell me. 4 or 5 points. That's all we're asking for.
that was such a bad thing, they'll try to defend it and deflect and normalize it. You need to understand the mentality. You don't have to be back into the 1800s to understand the mentality of the people back then. The people today have that same mentality. There's no possible way Donald Trump would be where he is
Oh, I was a little bit early. Here, all right, let's see what she has to say about Donald Trump.
right now if the majority of people weren't racist. He hasn't gone up there and put
I don't even know what to say about these fucking claims anymore. Trump's been in the public eye for decades, right? Like, since the fucking 80s, I think. Maybe even earlier than that. He's never had accusations of racism until the last year. Like, does that not... Like, if he's such a psychotic racist, if he's such a sycophantic racist, don't you think somebody would have said something by now? I mean, the guy was not some sort of obscure, Mughal who, kind of dwelled in the background. No, the fucking guy had a TV show. He's made cameos in a shit ton of movies and TV shows. And he even had his own fucking, Comedy Central roast like 2 years ago or something. It might have been a little bit longer than that. Actually, I think it was back in 2012 or so. But whatever, never mind. Let's keep going.
propose any policy. He has literally, his presidential ticket that he's ran on has been extreme racism. So the thing of it is you can see right now the mentality. So
I think all those black Trump supporters would like to have a word with you.
that's their mentality. But think about the mentality of our people too. Because again, you have a lot of black people that will deny that there's problems. You have a lot of black people that will co-sign the racism and the bullshit from these evil devils. You
I think she was about to say Bush. Bush was a lot of things. I don't think he was a racist. I'm not sure you could get him on that. So yeah, I guess this is the part of the video where she, I've heard some people describe this as like the crab mentality, where as soon as one person tries to not be a victim and be a bit more self-sufficient, emotionally, and by that I mean not needing to denigrate others, such as white people, um, or men, or so on and so forth, and be like, okay, well, even if people do not like me, there's not a lot I can do about it. You know, it's like if I go into an employer somewhere and they don't like white people, I don't think there's a need to like feather and tar, or I think it's tar and feather. Every person of everyone in that racial group, just because this one guy is a bit of an asshole. It's like, well, all right, I'll try to apply somewhere else. So yeah, this is where she convinces all of her viewers to not have any kind of um, faith in themselves. Blame it all on the white man, the omnipresent white man. Wah ha 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 ha. The albinoid. I love that word.
Have a lot of Black people that will say there isn't a racist society just because they get to lay up with a white supremacist.
So you're telling me the way we end racism is be friends with people of different races? Thanks, Sin. I appreciate that. I know that's not what you meant, but I'm still gonna take it like that. I need to find something positive in this. We're only 5 minutes in, and we still have 10 minutes of this shit. We haven't even gotten to the fucking article yet. Fucking hurry up, lady.
You have the same mentality in both groups of people. So the bottom line of it is it's already returned. The problem is that you don't even know how to recognize it because it doesn't look like you being on a plantation. Oh, but rest assured, you're already in it. So that's what this article pertains to. They asked him, Tavis Smiley, about it, and let's just go over his response because I haven't read this yet. But my whole opinion was just based off the question of it. It's like you don't need. I can already tell you, not only would the masses accept it based off what they're accepting now, but it would be successful, it will be thriving. And just like history repeating itself, they would have to be forced to end it. Just like they will have to be forced to end their devil reign and their injustice right now.
Are you calling for a race war or something, Sin? Like, what do you mean by forced? Like, I am really curious. I wish you would articulate this a bit more succinctly, because I'm really not sure what she means by forced. Like, is she saying a race war? That seems like what she's saying, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just too much of an idealist. Maybe she means something a bit different. Yeah, I don't want a race war. I mean, I guess bring it. I don't know. Oh fuck. You're giving me a headache, Sin. I hope you know that.
Clearly, even when given the opportunity to be a good, kind-hearted person and stop doing the devilishness, they choose to do evil. So they would choose to do it again.
What evil are white people doing? Like, what's evil that white like? What is the evil that white people can't help but do? Because honestly, from my perspective, it seems like white people have a problem of being too nice. I mean, I guarantee, like, she probably had comments of, insane bleeding heart white liberals who would listen to this bullshit, listen to this, clearly psychotic fucking person who's ranting about a race war as being the only way to solve, the problems of race relations in this country. And I guarantee if I looked through those fucking comments, I'd find at least one or two white people who are fucking like, oh, I'm so sorry about what my ancestors did. What can I do today? And the most disingenuous virtue signaling bullshit you'll ever see in your life. So yeah, I think white people have the opposite problem. We have too much pathological altruism in us. It's kind of feeding into this, feeding into hatred of us, I think, a little bit.
And that's just the reality of it is. This country was founded on racial hatred. And so to think
No, this country was founded on. Oh fuck it, you don't give a shit.
that it's just going to end without this place having to be torn down from the foundation and just started over, that's
You do want a race war. You are asking for a race war. Christ, I wonder if there's like a black pole I could go find somewhere. Maybe it's Atlanta Black Star. Maybe that's the black pole.
silly. It's silly to think that you have a group of people who don't have a progressive
Actually, I take that back. I've never actually been to Pole. I feel like an asshole right now. I don't know. Does Pole want race wars? Is that the kind of crowd they draw? If they don't, then I apologize to Pole.
mindset. Their psychology is what it is. Again, if they've been doing this and acting this way for hundreds of years, generation after generation after generation, clearly this is just who they are. This is all that they can produce. A bad tree cannot produce good fruit. If
So white people are genetically defective, which I'm assuming that's what you mean by your metaphor of a bad tree can't produce good fruit. White people are genetically inclined towards racism. Yeah, this is what this is what I notice about black nationalists and some of the more, I guess, kind of more militant parts of the alt right. They do a lot of projecting. Like they'll say things like, no matter what, this is how groups are. This is how this group is. Bottom line, end of the day. That kind of rhetoric. I always see that as a lot of projection. It's like, no, you're like that, and you're just making the mistake. It's a very common mistake of assuming that because you think a certain way, other people must think a certain way.
you have some, you can only produce what you can produce. And the thing
And white people have produced some of the nicest civilizations in the world. In fact, they're so nice that we actually, will try to treat minorities in our civilization well, which is something that's, pretty much unheard of until, white people became the most influential civilization. Well, I should say the Western civilization, be more specific. Like that's the fruit of our labor. You're welcome.
of it is you can't produce anything other than yourself. That's just really what it is. And even if you could, they certainly couldn't do it. So let's just get into it. Mr. Smiley, do you believe that given the crisis state of our democracy, we black folk could ever find ourselves enslaved again?
Oh my god, what a fucking idiot. The crisis state of our democracy. We're not a democracy, we're a republic. Oh god. That's another fucking autistic thing for me to say. I'm sorry. It's just that really fucking annoys me. We're not a democracy. Here's an interesting thing I think Sin might be interested in. Democracies are usually really terrible for minorities because democracies are all decided by majority rules. Like if there's 100 people in a room and this room is one country and there's a vote and 99 people want to kill Bob and one person doesn't want to kill Bob and it's Bob. Sorry, Bob, you're going to fucking die because that's democracy. Or maybe give a more concrete example or something a bit more, realistic, I guess you could say for lack of a better word. Let's say there's a country with 10,000 people, 8,000 are white, 2,000 are black, and there's a vote that says, let's kill all of the black people. 8,000 people vote yes, 2,000 people vote no. Sorry, black people, you're going to die because that's democracy. That's obviously not moral or right, and that's absurdly inhumane. So what you do is that you have laws that prevent the majority from changing the country in a way that would inflict harm on the minority. That's one of the aspects of a republic that makes it a superior system to a democracy. That's not what she fucking means at all. I don't even think she would recognize this distinction if you threw it in if you threw her like the fucking Constitution on her fucking fake ass wig. I'm gonna guess that's a wig. Looks like a wig to me. If you threw the Constitution at her fake fucking wig. But it's just something I'd like to point out.
You are already mentally enslaved. What do you mean again?
Mentally enslaved. See, this is what I mean when I say that the victimhood culture just it seeps so far into your fucking brain that you can't like get away from it. She's mentally enslaved. Nobody is enslaving her, but she's mentally enslaved. She's the only thing she's enslaved by is her insane demagoguery. Like that's it, and that's all her own doing.
Travis Smiley recounts in a piece in Time magazine about how he faltered when a student asked him this question recently. Smiley was giving a talk titled Making America as Good as It Promised at Lee University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, to a mostly white audience. So you don't confuse the theme of my talk with the slogan of a particular presidential campaign, he said in Time. Let me delineate the difference. When I hear Donald Trump suggested,
So, a quick note, this is why Donald Trump is such a genius fucking marketer. Because the slogans he makes, his critics are still forced to kind of, I guess you could say, play by his narrative. I'm not sure how else to describe it. Because even people who don't like Donald Trump will still try to make a play off of his phrases. And I think that backfires. Because that just keeps Donald Trump in their minds. You know what I mean? Hang on one second. Do. All right, I had to get some water. It was going a lot longer than I thought it would. All right, let's keep going.
he wants to make America great again, it always triggers the same three questions in my head, Smiley said. One, how is Trump defining greatness? Two, since
I imagine he defines it the same way most people would. Quality of life for the citizens. I think that's what he means. Maybe I'm wrong.
so many fellow citizens have yet to experience the true greatness of America for the first time, for whom are we making America great again?
Everybody, which is what he said a couple times. I mean, the kind of outreach he's tried to do with Black Americans is pretty unprecedented for a Republican candidate. Especially considering the fact that it would be such probably a mostly fruitless attempt. The black vote is just so entrenched with the Democratic Party that anything he does is probably mostly a gesture, but he still made the gesture. And I think he made it because he cares. That's just me. I think he genuinely does care.
And three, to what specific period of American greatness are you wanting us to return to?
Well, that's whatever you kind of interpret it as. I assume people probably mean, I'd say maybe 40s to 60s. Kind of the period where, well, actually, I take that back. It's an empty slogan. It's catchy as fuck, and it allows you to project pretty much whatever you want into that slogan. But yeah, he's not referring to anything specifically. And I get what this guy, Tavis, excuse me, is doing. He's deconstructing it. But in reality, it's just a slogan. Project whatever you want into it. It's one of the reasons why he's doing so well. He's a very, very good communicator.
The fact that someone, given the history of this country, could even open their mouth to say they would make America great again should tell you that that person is very demented and not even in reality.
Well, since somebody's demented and not really in reality, I don't think it's Trump supporters, though.
Again, to say that would say all of our history was great. So they're already telling you their mentality right there.
I don't believe anyone's ever said that all of our history is great. I don't believe that's what people are supporting Donald Trump. I don't think that's what they believe. I think they just don't want to see, or I think white people are getting annoyed because they don't want to see their culture continuously denigrated and insulted when every other group's culture is allowed to be expressed, in whatever fashion that they want. When you have a double standard that's that entrenched in our culture, you're going to get a lot of people upset. And when they get upset, they tend to look for different solutions politically as a way to change the culture. And then you get Trump.
And the fact that so many of them support this man with him saying that and no one's interrupted him, none of his support.
Well, I mean, they have tried to kill him. I mean, there was that one British guy, an illegal immigrant, fucking Brits sneaking people over, who tried to kill him. I mean, does that count as an interruption? Just food for thought.
Supporters have said, well, what's great about it? What time was it great? The fact that they haven't even said anything about that tells you their mentality.
I'm sorry. Anyone ever seen All Dogs Go to Heaven? Does her face kind of look like that alligator? Is it just me? Because that's like maybe it's like the fucking bottle. It just looks like some giant fucking gator beak. Or well, alligators don't have fucking beaks. That's retarded of me. I just undermined my entire point.
Anyway, his talk expounds upon these questions as well as doing his best to answer them. Smiley is not coy with his disdain for Trump and how he is handling himself in his presidential campaign, but it was toward the end of his talk that he says he was introduced to another question that still haunts me. I had handled most of the closing Q&A questions before the student asked him the question about slavery. Whoa, didn't see that one coming, he writes. Neither did the mostly white audience. A quiet fell over the room. I swallowed hard. And then looking directly at the student, I could see that he was dead serious, and I wanted to treat his question with the soberness it deserved. But truthfully, I stumbled as I began to respond, not knowing how to properly frame my response. Smiley eventually answered yes. His explanation is centered around what he says is the blatant disrespect President Barack Obama has received during his two-term tenure.
Really? Okay. Obama is not unique in being disrespected for as the president. Not even remotely close. You know, I mean, all the shit they said about Bush. I mean, we can just start at Bush, but you can go back, to whatever time period you want. American politics has always been fucking a little bit cutthroat. It's always been fucking insulting. The most American thing you can do is say fuck you to the president. Like, there's not a whole lot of other things that are more symbolic of of the American spirit than turning to the government and the people in government and saying fuck you. I don't know if a lot of black people thought that when the first non-white president came around that this secret white privilege would like be extended. You know what I mean? Like they suddenly they'd now get into the club, and that Obama would not be held under the same scrutiny as every other president in history. I don't know. That's not a very well articulated thought. I apologize. I should maybe return to this subject because I have this idea in my head and I can't describe it off the top of my head right now.
As president, as well as Republican obstructionism in Congress.
Republican obstructionism in Congress is racist. Really? Really? I, your political enemies, like the other party, not doing what you're told, not doing what you want them to do. In this case, you being you being Obama, that is a symbol of racial intolerance. What? How is that racial intolerance? Like, that's their job. Republicans and Democrats are on a different political spectrum. Well, the parties themselves aren't, but you know what I mean. Conservatives and liberals are in a different spectrum. They're obviously not going to want to do what they say. It's like, this is fucking stupid. Republican obstructionism in Congress is racist. What? No, it isn't. I mean, the fucking. Oh, God. I don't know. Go back to any other fucking president, and you will see that if the Congress was not made up in the majority of their party, then they would have obstructed some of the things the president wanted to do, and vice versa. That's how a two-party state works.
Which Republicans are threatening to continue should Hillary win the general election.
Trust me, they will not obstruct anything Clinton does at all. They're all a bunch of fucking shills and cucks, so don't worry about that.
See, again, because the only people they want to cling to is someone that they feel like will allow them to be as hateful, unfair, devious, and evil as their nature requires.
White people support Donald Trump so they can be evil and devious as their devilish nature requires. Those fucking albinoids.
That's the only thing that they want to be. That's the only person they want to support. If you're not doing that, they don't want to deal with you. Smiley goes into detail about his feelings. 7 months ago, President Obama nominated Merrick Garland to replace the deceased Justice Antonin Scalia on the U.S. Supreme Court. It is his constitutional duty, not just prerogative, to do so. Hours after the president's announcements, Republicans announced there will be no hearings, no votes, no action whatsoever until the American people vote on a new president. They have kept their word. Some Republicans are now boldly declaring that they will block Judge Garland even if Hillary Clinton wins, assuming that she renominates him.
That's because the Supreme Court has become far more influential than it really should be, personally. Like, they're not just judges at this point. They're like semi-autocratic overlords. And I would say this if it was a leftist Supreme Court or a right-wing Supreme Court. Like, they have a lot of power to set policy and decisions, and they're not even, voting for someone barely holds them accountable, barely holds a politician accountable to begin with. But the fact is that they're appointed by the president, and they're there until they fucking die, means that it is a huge fucking deal who's sitting on there. I'm in favor of making the judicial branch weaker so we wouldn't have to go down these obstructionist routes. But unfortunately, that's not likely, considering the fact that, statism generally only goes one way. That's a bit of a side issue.
He continued.
They're not blocking President Obama because they're racist, which is the point.
He was saying, in my lifetime, I have never seen Congress so blatantly mock our Constitution. They don't care about the
Okay, the leftists that Obama wants to put in with all their living document bullshit, they're the ones who would mock the Constitution, Sin. It's not Republicans. And when is checks and balances anti-Constitution? Like, if one branch is going to do something that might harm the country, it makes perfect sense for another branch to try to check and balance that other branch. Like, maybe I'm misunderstanding what checks and balances is supposed to mean.
Constitution, because they know who wrote it and they know that they have the same mentality as the person that wrote the Constitution. The fact that you would...
There's not one person, it was a bunch of people. God, you fucking idiot.
Even insert in the Constitution that slavery is abolished except if you are a criminal and a felon should tell everyone. It should already tell you all you need to know.
Okay, the reason the founders were, not all of the founders opposed slavery. Some of them pretty legitimately kept it up, and we rightly see them as as an extraordinarily morally reprehensible thing to do. But if you wanted to have a single country and not 13 small countries, the people who wanted to limit or end slavery, like Benjamin Franklin, especially later in his life, they had to compromise. They had to find the middle ground with the people who supported slavery. It's just, ending slavery, ending an institution that has been around, or excuse me, I should say a practice that's been around since earliest recorded history of mankind. That's just not something you're going to do in one generation. It's just not.
Because the bottom line is, if they really felt slavery was bad, they would have put in that Constitution, slavery is abolished for any reason, period. There's no reason why slavery should ever be.
So there's lots of things you might morally find reprehensible, but you don't necessarily do anything about it because, the need to get on with your life doesn't always mean, or excuse me, I should say, it sometimes means that your principles and your ideals and what you feel is righteous needs to be put to the side in order to keep the ball rolling. Like, I personally find the idea that a young boy who gets circumcised should be seen as an insane criminal act. It's a barbarous medieval practice. I can't justify it at all in my own head, and I can't understand how anyone could ever want to justify it in their head. But that doesn't mean I'm going around and shanking rabbis, down the street. It's like, okay, I don't like what they're doing, but I'm not going to go out and, interrupt the fucking, I'm not going to run into a hospital and fucking beat the shit out of a doctor who's been told to do a circumcision. That's not how an orderly, well-maintained society functions. I'm going to go to the court, first I'm going to do is try to change the culture, try to raise people's awareness That'll create political demand and see if I can get the laws changed, fight through the people who want to stop the law, so on and so forth. Yeah, it's a slow process. It kind of sucks. It's not great. It's the best we got. And that's what the founders who wanted to end slavery or at least limit slavery were facing. They were not going to finish it overnight. People who judge them for not being able to finish it overnight are just fucking like it's very easy to judge history when you know because you know what the future is. Like it's very easy to judge people who do things in the past when you know what's going to happen in the future. And part of understanding and respecting history is acknowledging the fact that the people you're reading about did not know what the future was going to hold. So everything they did was in the context of the then and now and the past and their past.
Around. For no reason is a good reason to have slavery, period. However,
I agree. That's the first reasonable thing you've said this whole video.
you are dealing with a group of demonic people who have no interest in being good. They've already shown that their very nature, it would be going against their very nature to do anything nice or just or fair or kind.
Okay. I mean, I guess affirmative action's a pretty low-hanging fruit, and yeah, it's a low-hanging fruit, but I think that's nice. You know, I think the 14th Amendment, is that which one it is? You know, that was pretty nice. You know, 4 or 5 points. Like I said, you know, hey, a couple points here, right? 3 or 4. That's all I'm asking. Sin.
So the thing of it is, this is the only thing they want to do. It's like the fact that you do have that in there should tell you all you need to know. This isn't an agreeable group of people. They're just not. They don't thrive off of harmony and peacefulness and righteousness. They thrive off of evil and devil mentality. And that is why I do very well see that we are going back into that. They would have stopped the disenfranchisement a long time ago. There wouldn't have had to be a war to force them to stop engaging in hundreds of years of devilish activity.
Again, a war where hundreds of thousands of white people died, you know, for the third time.
If this was a good group of people. And again, no one else's history shows this but theirs.
Literally every racial group has both been enslaved and has practiced slavery on every continent, in every time period, under every religion and ideology. You know, slavery, look, before industrialization, which is what ended slavery, was industrialization. And the reason it ended slavery was because before you had before you had factories and so on, before you had energy, the only way to get things done was human muscle or animal muscle. And it's a lot easier to tell a human what to do than a fucking cow and shit, you know? So slavery as an economic system was the only thing available to people to use in order to build complex societies. Or to, you know, to do the fucking miserable hard work. And the second reason why, you know, slavery was common around everywhere is because your males in your tribe or in your nation were needed for war. You know, you wanted to use them for war. So you used other people's males for the physical labor or females for more kind of, you know, sexual enjoyment. Use another tribe or group's people to do the shitty work so that your own people would be available to do other tasks, to, you know, be able to be trusted with having the swords. You know, you can't give the slaves the swords because they'll turn around and just stab you. You know, the Romans learned this the hard way a few times. I'm kind of rambling here, but look, every racial group has practiced slavery. White people enslaving black people is not unique. Asian people enslaving Persians, you know, the Mongols, that's not unique. Turkish people enslaving Slavic people, that's not unique. English people enslaving Irish people, etc., etc. It's not unique. It is not unique at all. Sin.
I wonder what other constitutional mandates Congress could just decide to ignore. From this, as well as Trump's blatant racism and the like-mindedness of his followers, Smalley says he does not think it's a far cry to think black people could be enslaved again should Trump win the election next month. He finishes his article and
What? 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 Okay, we won the argument. Trump fans, Trump supporters, Trump movement people, we won the argument. They've got nothing left. They're now saying if Trump gets in, slavery's coming back. That has to be the bottom. We have to have found the bottom. Thanks, Sin. I appreciate you taking us there. I didn't know if we'd ever get there, but god damn it, I'm glad to be here. Because there's no way it can get worse than that. There's no way down. You literally just had AtlantaBlackStar.com publish a piece that said, and if that says if Trump wins the election next month, it is not a far cry that black people could be enslaved again. We win the argument. They've got nothing left.
time by saying, with the hair-raising, bone-chilling, spine-breaking, nerve-wracking path we're on right now, I shudder to think where this democracy could end up one
Republic.
sad day if we don't get off this slow roll and make our way to higher ground soon.
So you don't know where this democracy could end up. So if the majority of people vote for Trump, and you want to oppose that, that means you must not like democracy. No, I don't like democracy. I prefer a republic. But you're the one who keeps talking about democracy here. Pick a side.
Listen, the thing of it is, though, you're not going to.
Oh, please give us this jewel as we wrap up.
In order for you to come to a resolution, you have to do that with like-minded people. You're not dealing with like-minded people. You have to be trying to come to a resolution with someone who has a vested interest in the same thing that you're interested in. When you have one group of people that's interested in fairness and justice, and another group of people who have shown time after time after time that the only thing that they're interested in is disenfranchisement and the destruction of that group that wants peace, you're not going to come to a resolution.
Projection.
That's not going to bring a resolution to this. It's just not going to, because the group of people that we're dealing with are not interested in that. They're only interested in devil activity. They are extremely selfish, demented, psychotic, and depraved, and you're just not going to do a resolution with them.
Oh my God. You do know there were white people in the civil rights movement, right? Like there were black people who believed in segregation and who were on the other side of the argument, right? You know, people can come together across racial lines because of similar ideals and similar goals. Like it can happen, Sin. I'm sorry, like you clearly you must have had some sort of really shitty experience with a white person and you're just not clever enough of a person to understand that it doesn't represent a whole group. So part of me feels a little bit of pity for you.
If there could be a resolution, it wouldn't take hundreds of years. It wouldn't take centuries upon centuries upon centuries. Really, what we're doing is wasting time thinking that this is a group of people that you can just come to the table with and decide on how to make things peacefully and then expect that to happen. It's not going to happen. And if it was going to happen, it's not going to happen with them. This is a devil-minded people, and we need to start learning that and acting accordingly and finding out how to deal with this group of people. I'll leave the link in the description box so you guys can read over the article in the comments. Let me know what you think. Do you think that this is heading back to slavery? I personally feel like we're already there. You already have mass incarceration. You already have Jim Crow. You already have segregated schools.
What? Okay, if there's any segregation on things like college campuses, it's coming completely from black students and BLM supporters. Like they're the ones demanding segregation. Like it's not white people. Oh my God. She's just rambling. Just like go to every fucking era of this country and just throw it out there at the same time and hope that, counts as evidence for the future impending enslavement of black people. It's fucking, ugh. God damn.
Already have black people being lynched publicly. We're already back there already.
What? I mean, I guess I could mention like, white people in Charlotte who got their shit kicked in and viciously assaulted because they were white. So, I mean, I don't know. It's like it seems to be mutual. I'll try to look up and find anything about lynching. You know what? I'll look it up, but yeah, I can almost guarantee it didn't fucking happen.
Ready. The question is what are we gonna do about it? Like, comment,
Race war now.
subscribe, share the video, and let me know what you guys' thoughts on. Sorry for getting this video out late. Sometimes I swear I spend my whole entire day just running around this entire city, but it's like
looking for white people to lynch.
I still want to give you guys the videos and bring these topics to you guys.
Damn.
Because again, this is what I'm dedicated to. Thank you for your support. Thank you for donating. Like, comment.
Of course you're getting money for this shit.
Subscribe, share the video, and I'll see you guys in the next
one. Man, that was a doozy. Man, I'm probably gonna do more recordings of this Sin lady. Before I go, let's read some. Excuse me. Yeah, let's scooch on back. Shut up. Let's go. Let's read some comments. Why not? That'll be fun. So true. Thanks, Michael. These white trolls live in a different reality to us. They genuinely cannot see what we see or feel what we feel. They merely walk around intimidating every other people's of color. There's no such thing as people of color. Like, that's nonsense. Like, I've got like 8 colors. Like, it's a complete bullshit term. It's just the politicalization of race politics. That's true, but they were speaking of the actual physical slavery of our past. Has yet to see a warrant. Legal or not. This guy is literally like ranting about the race war. Alright, I'm just kind of floundering around. I think this video is long enough. Thanks for coming along with me, guys. I'll do more of these. These are fun. Peace.